Hello, ladies. Welcome back to another episode of Menopause Reimagined. I hope you've been enjoying our podcast and listening to it on a consistent basis. And if you have been and you love what we talk about, I would be really grateful if you can take a minute to rate and review it. Because when you do that, it sends it out to more people. And if you haven't already filled out our surveys, we have a new one. It's called Pelvic Health in Menopause, Perimenopause and Menopause. And we launched it, I think it was like a week or two ago. And I would be really, really appreciative if you could take a minute to fill it out, as well as all of our surveys on our website at wearemorphus.com under the research tab at the top of the page. And we will, by the end of this year, have 7 published studies out in the journal Menopause, which is very exciting. So we are so grateful to all of you who take the time to fill out the surveys. They literally only take a minute or two each to fill out, but that time that you spend doing that makes a massive difference for women everywhere. So thank you to all of you who have been helping us and who have shared your voice, shared your story with us through our surveys. To me, when I read them, I read every single survey, I read every comment that comes in, and I am humbled by your responses and the fact that you take the time to fill it out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. If you are new to our podcast, my name is Andrea Donsky. I'm a nutritionist for 20 plus years. I'm a menopause educator and I'm a published menopause researcher. I'm also the co-founder of wearemorphus.com, a company that empowers you to take control of your health and symptoms with nutrition, lifestyle, supplements, and research. We have amazing supplements on our website at wearemorphus.com, and all of the supplements that we have are third-party tested and extremely high quality. And I take them myself, and so does Randy, my business partner. So if you have any questions or you're looking to purchase supplements, please go to wearemorphus.com, check them out. You can always email me, sign up for our newsletter, and you can always reply to our newsletter, and those emails come directly to me and my team, and we will always get back to you. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Today, we're talking about the pill and testing. And my guest is Elizabeth Katzman. She's a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the founder of Strong Choices, a wellness practice focused on helping women reclaim their hormonal, metabolic, and gut health, especially during perimenopause and midlife. She's known for her work around the pill hangover, addressing the long-term impacts of hormonal birth control that often go unrecognized in conventional care. Through functional lab testing, education, and a grounded anti-fear approach, Elizabeth helps women break free from symptoms to feel strong, resilient, and empowered in their bodies. Now, here's Elizabeth. Welcome to Menopause Reimagined, Elizabeth.
Hi, Andrea. Nice to see you.
So I'd love you to start with your story and to explain what a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner is, because as we were talking about before we started to record, I'm a nutritionist, and I thought that title was really interesting. So explain what the difference is and what exactly it is that you do.
So I went through that program, I guess it's about 12 years now. And at the time, it was one of the few programs you could go through and order labs yourself. There were no direct-to-consumer labs at the time. Doctors were very much the gatekeepers, which they still kind of are, but I don't think that a lot of people realize that they can pretty much order any lab they want themselves if they're curious. So I don't like the idea of people being held back from their own information.
Right.
And when I was taking care of my babies, I realized it was really hard to find great healthcare, and I wanted to take our health into our own hands. So I went through the FDN program, and it really methodically went through all of the functional labs, what they do, how to read them, why you would need them, basic endocrinology, systems, holistic way of looking at the body. So yes, there's a nutrition component, but I would say it was largely science and lab based. It was a pretty robust program that I loved. And then from there, I went to do some health coaching programs. And when I got into perimenopause, then I had to go back and I went to, A4M. I did mentorships with physicians like Felice Gersh, Dr. Rosenstreet, Dr. Lindsay Berkson. So I did a lot of different mentorships and then had to go back to FDN also and do some, other courses for hormones. I mean, it is crazy that you can be in this space, be a woman, and actually not have that much, at least for me, I did not have that much of an understanding of the reproductive system. Like I knew the basics, the nuts and bolts, but when it comes to perimenopause, you have to really dial in. And I think I like to educate my clients too, because it's hard to sort of make lifestyle changes when you need to, if you don't have a why. Like I think the why is very motivational,
For sure.
and important. And I think that women need to understand what their reproductive cycle, what their menstrual cycle looks like, whether they have one or not, what the benefits are. And it's part of the reason I like talking about the pill so much, because people are so quick to just turn off their own natural cycle. And I feel like if they understood really what it did and why it's important, they wouldn't be so quick to grab the pill, which is not, I don't want to villainize it. It definitely has its place for someone who chooses to use it. But it's not benign. It's not without side effects that can last a long time.
So I agree with you. I think that we didn't really learn. I mean, I didn't either. I didn't really know much about the female hormone system. And I still always say, like, I'm not an expert at it, right? Because I do believe it's something that we should all try to learn. Taken courses on it, but at the end of the day, like I didn't learn it in school. Like, and I'm so many of us didn't learn it in school. My mom never taught it to me. It's like, I don't even know if she knows it, right? So why don't we start there before we get into the pill? Can you start with a little like 101 on female hormones? Because I think that would be kind of a nice segue.
Yeah, I mean, basically, let's say if we start around puberty, and then it ties back nicely to perimenopause, because menopause and peri is basically reverse puberty. So we kind of ramp up our hormones and then they ramp back down, and both phases are difficult physically, mentally. And the reason is that our body and our brains and the connection between our brains and our ovaries, it takes a minute to catch up. So when a girl is going through puberty, it can sometimes be uncomfortable because it's the first time their bodies have experienced an increase in estrogen. So there's a wave where you start, the early part of your cycle, it's almost menopausal levels during the part of your cycle where you're bleeding. And then it ramps up, and then you ovulate. And that's when you produce progesterone. So if you're not ovulating, you don't produce progesterone. It's yin and yang. You need the estrogen to build you up. It builds up your uterine lining, it builds up your brain and your bones, but you also need then to balance it with your natural progesterone that you get when you ovulate. They all also play against each other with osteoclast and osteoblast activity. So you're breaking down old bone that you don't want anymore, and you're laying down nice, new, fresh bone. And so this process benefits literally everything: our eyes, our ears, our hair, our nails. So it's an inside out process that's a really beautiful process that we need to honor at all stages in life, but it's not easy. And so when a teenage girl comes to their mom and says, they're missing a lot of school, they're having painful periods, or they're having heavy bleeding, or they're having acne, it's a very natural response for a mom to say, okay, let's go to the doctor. And the doctor says, let's go on the pill. It's simple, it's easy, it's going to regulate your menstrual cycle, it's going to smooth everything out. The problem with that is it doesn't regulate your menstrual cycle. It completely takes it away. And so the way that it works is it's, synthetic estrogen and synthetic progestin. And there's a week where you have a bleed. It's a withdrawal bleed. It's not a menstrual cycle. It's not there for any scientific reason. Part of the reason it's there is to make a woman believe that this is natural.
Mm.
It started because birth control was not legal at the time when it came out.
Mm.
So it was marketed to the FDA and to the public as something to balance a menstrual cycle, balance a woman's moods, smooth everything out. And there wasn't talk about it being contraception, although they knew that was the whole point. It was like wink, wink, everyone knows, we just can't say that. So there's a mindset that goes back to the origin of the pill, which is that you're still having a normal menstrual cycle, everything's fine. We've just normalized it so we can count the days of the month and you know when you're going to get your period. But when you think about it, you're actually blocking your body from producing its own hormones. You're not getting the benefits, and there's a lot of differences. And progestins versus progesterone is a huge difference because progestin is linked with increased depression, increased anxiety. There's often a leap from taking the pill to taking an SSRI, whereas your own body's progesterone that it produces is very calming. It helps with sleep, it helps with anxiety. So they're very different things.
So maybe you could just explain what an SSRI is for some people who may not know what that is.
So like Lexapro or Paxil, an antidepressant, because the pill, for a lot of reasons, one of them being it depletes your B vitamins, which automatically can lead to depression for a lot of women, especially if you have certain genetics that make you a poor methylator and you're not supporting yourself with B vitamins. So, if someone very much wants to take the pill, at least, you need to support yourself. You need to have, I'm not about, this is an all or nothing. It's really informed consent. So if the physician were to say, okay, we can give you the pill and it will suppress your oil glands, so your acne will get better, and it does have certain benefits. It does make life simpler, but it would be great if they could also say, you need to take some methylated B vitamins also. It depletes zinc, magnesium. It inhibits the enzyme that converts T4 to active T3. So you also have like almost a 300% increase in hypothyroidism linked to taking the pill.
Wow.
So it's an issue not only in puberty, but also in perimenopause, because this is another time where a woman will come to their physician and say, listen, this is crazy. 1 month I don't have a period. 1 month it's 25 days. 1 month it's 34 days. It's all over the place. I don't know when I'm ovulating, so I don't want to have another baby. I don't know when it's safe to have sex or not. I'm having hot flashes. The pill will help with all of those things in perimenopause, right? It does protect against pregnancy. It will make your hot flashes go away. So a woman in peri who's essentially in reverse puberty, who takes the pill, will likely feel better. But this is a time that we're already susceptible to depression and anxiety because of the loss in progesterone. We're already susceptible to losing, 10% of our bone density within 5 years of menopause. So without our natural estrogen and progesterone, what little we may have, we're still benefiting. We're giving all of those things up. And even though it's enough to get rid of hot flashes, it's not protecting your cardiovascular system. It's not protecting your brain from shrinking. In addition, when you take an oral estrogen, it has to go first pass through the liver. So it increases blood clotting factors. It increases inflammatory markers. All of those things are naturally increasing during perimenopause as it is. So you're compounding these issues. And the blood clot risk is a very real thing. It is less for a 20-year-old woman, but it is more for a 50-year-old woman. So it's really not a time in your life where you want to be increasing your risk of stroke.
What's interesting is I had PCOS, and I remember when I went to the doctor, they put me on the pill. So I was on the pill for I think over 12 years. And then I went off it when I went back to school to become a nutritionist, and I learned about its side effects, and I just decided that it wasn't for me anymore. And I remember I went off it and I wanted to have babies, so it kind of all coincided at the same time. But I hear from a lot of women, and actually when I went off it, I used to think, this is kind of how little I knew, is I used to think that I had PCOS and I was on the pill, that it would push menopause. Like even back then I was like, oh, I probably won't, not that I even knew, I knew what menopause was, but I didn't know like obviously what perimenopause was. But I used to think, oh, I'm probably not going to like age or go into menopause earlier, or I'll probably go in later because of both of those things. And neither of that happened. I ended up going into menopause around 50, 49, 50. I'm still not 100% sure when. But what's interesting to me is that I hear from a lot of women, and I see a lot of people online will say, go on the pill as one of the options, kind of like what you alluded to, if you're having symptoms or whatever. But what you're saying is it's really not a great option to choose.
Well, there's a couple things in what you're saying. So one of the things is you would think that if your ovaries aren't having to work as hard because the pill is overriding it, that you would increase your ovarian longevity.
Right. That's what I thought.
But what increases ovarian longevity is mitochondrial function. And we need bioidentical estrogen for mitochondrial function. So when you're doing the synthetic estrogens, you are not helping mitochondrial function. So you're not extending the life of your ovaries in the way that you would if you had multiple pregnancies, where your ovaries are sort of taking a break from doing their job. So the decrease in mitochondrial function is a huge factor. The other issue is when you said you weren't really sure when you were in menopause, even though you weren't on the pill, a lot of women on the pill and peri have this issue because you have no way of
Yes.
knowing. You could
Yeah.
be fully menopausal,
Yeah.
but
And
you're
have no
still
idea.
having that withdrawal bleed. So who knows what phase you're in? So you won't know what you need to support because, a woman can go into perimenopause in their 30s or they can go in their 50s. I mean, there's just a huge range versus, based on lifestyle and genetics and family history and all of that. So that to me is a huge interference with the connection between like, well, what do I need to be leaning into? Because we really do need to make major lifestyle changes during perimenopause. And if we're masking everything with a pill, we won't know where we're at. And if you're on the pill, none of these tests are going to kind of matter, right? Like one of the great things to test the first 3 days of your cycle would be FSH, follicle stimulating hormone. And that rises as estradiol declines. But if you're on the pill, it's going to stay pretty steady. So it's one of the reasons why, you'll hear it's the zone of chaos, like don't even bother testing, it doesn't matter. Well, as women, it's always the zone of chaos. To be honest, it's like it doesn't matter. You could test your hormones at 6 in the morning and they're completely different at 1 in the afternoon. They change hour to hour, day by day. We're looking at patterns. So the pill just throws a wrench in monitoring. So if you're not on the pill, you can look during the perimenopause years once or twice a year and see what your FSH looks like. You want it definitely below 25 for brain protection because we know your brain starts shrinking if it goes higher than that. Lisa Mosconi has done a lot of work in that area, but below 10 for sure. So let's say it's 5. Okay, you're good. The next year it's 8. The next year it's not looking for perfection. It's just looking for, are you ramping it up? Okay, well, maybe it's time if you're interested in preserving your brain function and helping to prevent Alzheimer's and protect your bones, then maybe it's a time that you might want to think about adding in bioidentical hormones. It's, to me, really not a time you would want to be introducing a synthetic hormone that's not going to protect you against anything. And there's lots of great, I really like uva. You just pee on a stick and it tells you your not exactly like a serum test, but it gives you a range of your FSH, your LH. So you can do like a clear blue easy ovulation kit, which is cheap and easy. The only problem is that, I mean, especially if you're like 49 and really not wanting a pregnancy, if you had sex like the day before and it said you weren't ovulating and now today you took it and you are, well, that sperm's still hanging out. So I really like looking at LH levels to see when that's ramping up, and those are your days to be more careful. And I feel like, as women of a certain age, we should be responsible enough to be able to just a couple days a month take a peek and then use a condom.
So what you're saying then is if you're on the pill, getting hormone testing will not really tell you anything because you're on synthetic hormones that are going to falsify, not falsify, but they're going to, it's like prompt, it's like it's going to make you have more than you might have because you're
Yeah.
on the pill. So if you want to know if you're in menopause, you'd have to go off the pill. How long would you have to be off the pill for before you go get tested?
Every woman's different. I mean, the rule of thumb is kind of 3 months.
Okay.
Some women bounce right back a month later. Some women, it's like a year later. So,
Okay.
sort of all of my clients, I say 3 months and let's take a look.
So 3 months, and then you can go get tested to see, and that'll give you a good indication. Well, that'll tell you if your hormones are in the menopausal ranges. But if you're in perimenopause, it could also still not tell you much because it could be fine or in the normal range that day, and then you don't really know. So it's a bit frustrating.
It's frustrating, and I like to test a bit more for perimenopausal women. It's just blood tests, and a lot of them are covered under insurance. And even if they're not, it's like $10, to check your estradiol. It's not a huge expense. And it's not, the urine testing that can be more expensive. It's just a simple blood test.
For FSH and LH, though, you would have to do several tests because one test wouldn't be an indication, right? So how many tests do you recommend? Because it's more of a pattern.
It's also on different days, which does complicate things. So FSH really is day 1 through 3. And then if you're testing estradiol and progesterone, you want to do it like days 19, 20, 21. So it is a bit more work. And FSH, yeah, you want to, I mean, it's a blood draw and it's not expensive. So I just will test them all multiple times.
Multiple times. And how long in between? Like, so is it
Like 6 months.
six? Oh, like
I'd wait like 3 months after the pill and then test like 6 months later.
okay. And then you're doing it, you said you'll just test it multiple times. Are you testing it? You'll wait the 3 months, test it
Yeah.
6 months later. But that's a long time to know whether or not you're in perimenopause. Like that's like you're talking about 9 months now, like to know whether or not you're in perimenopause. Like
It's
so
a long time. And if someone's having issues, like if someone's having a hard time sleeping, or if someone knows that, like typically if they ovulate, they could feel a cramp or there's a change in their mucosa, or if they're in tune and they're like, or
symptoms.
if they're doing, it's one of the reasons I like to do UVA during this time, is
Mhm.
you can see yourself. You'll know if you're ovulating, because even someone in peri who's cycling may not be ovulating at all. And
Mhm.
those women then will say, like, I'm having a hard time sleeping. I have anxiety. I didn't. So you can add progesterone, the last couple of weeks of your month. It's not going to hurt you. It's going to help a tremendous amount. We can still do things in the meantime. Or if you're not ready for that, we can still do things like Vitex and Maca. And there's things you can do to support yourself during this phase. It's not like you're just kind of suffering month after month while you're figuring it out.
I did Vitex for a long time, and when I was in peri, and that's more of a perimenopause thing
Yeah.
than it would be a menopause thing. But
It does a great job in especially early to mid peri. The further you go, I mean, when your hormones are gone, they're gone. There's nothing to support. Like, I think it's so funny when people say, "Oh, you got to balance your hormones," but like, there's nothing to balance. But the herbs are great in the early phases.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm unsure about Vitex because I did take it for I think probably around a year, and then it eventually stopped working for me. But then there was other issues that were going on. Like I had like it made I had cysts on my ovaries. It made that grew, and I never was able to kind of come back and be like, was it Vitex that did that? Like I wasn't sure that what the story was because I do have the MTHFR gene, so I don't methylate properly. So it's female hormones are so complicated, and that's at the end of the day, which I think is so important because if you don't know if you methylate, or you might take something that you think is like this amazing thing that's on trend, but it actually can make things grow, or because you don't methylate it can make things grow. Like it becomes this. That's why I'm a big fan of advocating to work with a practitioner that understands your body. So, or looking like looking at someone like yourself, like when you're actually looking at tests, like you're going to look at the different tests and be like, okay, do you methylate? Look at genetics. Do you what is your body doing for you? And I think that to me is the most important thing when it comes to perimenopause and menopause, because, and that includes whether or not you want to go on hormones, because I know hormones, a lot of women feel amazing on it, amazing, and it is absolutely one of the options. Just work with a practitioner that understands hormones.
Yeah, it is really important to look at genetics if someone can afford it too. I mean, I typically treat each client as if they have some MTHFR mutations.
Interesting.
Most people do. So
Mm,
anytime I recommend a supplement, I'm always recommending the methylated bees.
methylated bees. Yeah,
Just
exactly.
because why not?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
so common. Um, but then nutrition does get tricky if you don't know someone's genetics, like their ApoE4 status. So, everyone wants to ramp up their protein, which is great. But if you have one or two copies of ApoE4, which changes the way you transport cholesterol, you have more of a risk of oxidized cholesterol. That woman needs to be focused more on like fish and chicken, even though I'm a huge fan of red meat and it has so many nutrients, and liver has so many nutrients. There's so much value in organ meats. But for certain genetics, it's just not a great idea. I mean, protein's a whole nother subject. Every protein has its issue, right? Chicken with arsenic and fish with heavy metals and all of the things. You sort of have to pick your poison, but it's really helpful to know someone's genetics.
Yeah, and I think nowadays, like with the DNA company, like there's so many, like we have a partnership with the DNA company, and I could put a link below to it if you want to get your DNA tested. But I do think that from a standpoint of nutrition, I think, like you said, like you can kind of get into the weeds of things, but at the end of the day, we need more protein. And also with red meat, now I am like I like red meat, but everything in moderation. And the reason why, so to what your point of what you said, but also red meat can also, once you're in menopause, this is a menopause thing. I just did actually a TikTok around it. I stitched a TikTok because someone was saying how we should be cooking with cast iron pans, and we got to make sure that, our with our iron. But when you're in menopause, you got to be really careful about your iron levels and your ferritin levels going too high. So that would be another reason for me. It's like, again, we're going back to the testing, is making sure that you are getting tests at least once a year, if not twice a year, checking those ferritin levels. You don't want those ferritin levels to go over 100. I've done a few interviews, and I'll post those below as well, on iron levels in perimenopause and menopause. And one of the men I interviewed Dr. Thomas Pearls, and he is the head of like the Longevity Institute in Boston. And he was saying that people who live the longest actually have lower levels of ferritin. So it's just super interesting to me. So aside from what you're saying about methylation, also we got to be mindful of how much red meat we're eating, only because from a standpoint of iron as well, you just want to be cognizant of it. So trying to like everything in moderation. I mean, that really is my kind of my mantra, is the 80-20 rule of everything in moderation, especially as we go into perimenopause and menopause.
I agree. And a lot more women have hemochromatosis genetics than they realize, because their whole life they were menstruating or at least having withdrawal bleed with the pill. And so it wasn't an issue. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden they see their ferritin climbing and they don't know why. And a lot of genetic testing doesn't even tell you that. Like, I mean, 23andMe kind of is gone now, but it didn't test all the variants. There are a lot of different SNPs that are involved with iron. So that does become a major issue for more people than they realize
Yeah,
when
no,
they
for
have
sure. Okay,
menstruation.
so let's just recap it for a minute, just because we kind of talked about a lot. So what you're saying is that the pill, although it's given as an option for many women in perimenopause and menopause, may not be the best option. And so what are you recommending? Are you recommending that they look into bioidentical hormones? Like, so women who are listening now are like, okay, great, I'm on the pill. Now what? How do I have this discussion with my doctor? Where do I go from here?
Well, I guess a couple other things I want women to understand about the pill is not only is it depleting your B vitamins, your magnesium, your selenium, your enzymes for your thyroid. It's robbing you of your natural progesterone for your thyroid. So thyroid issues skyrocket during perimenopause.
Which
And
I didn't realize, by the way, sorry to interrupt you, that the pill that women on the pill are more prone to hypothyroidism, which, by the way, I found out I was hypothyroid around the time I went off the pill.
You're
So,
by
wow,
hundreds
thank
of
you.
percent.
Oh, wow. Like I didn't know. And I'm like, great. So now I've been on thyroid medication since I'm like close to 30. And that's probably the reason why that happened. But no one ever told me that. I didn't know that.
One of the things I actually recommend for women in peri is to just do oral progesterone is sort of the gold standard, but there's no reason why you can't use different applications if you're taking orally. You can also rub some topical on top of your thyroid, which is what I do the second 2 weeks of the month. I also sometimes will get, if you're susceptible to fibroids or ovarian cysts, you can rub a little topical over your ovaries, a little topical over your breasts. So there's no perfect science with this stuff. It's very individual to what you're susceptible to. So yeah, take your oral progesterone if you're in that phase, but you can also do it topically, which helps a great deal with cysts, fibroids, thyroid.
I did topical progesterone for years because it helped me with fertility. Again, PCOS, fertility, like the infertility. So I did topical progesterone for over 10 years, for a really long time. And I'm a big fan. You know what's interesting about progesterone, and maybe you could probably give me some insight, is that when I tried oral progesterone, I did 100 milligrams. My boobs were on fire. Like I could not do the oral. The topical, the cream, no problem.
So yeah, anything oral has to do liver first pass. It also, so when we have a history of being on the pill, it does mess up our natural hormone receptors. And a lot of women that have some progesterone resistance in perimenopause, when they're all excited to take it, and then they're like, wait, I get a lot of anxiety. I actually have a hard time sleeping. This is like not working for me.
Mm.
Those women, first of all, often have a better time with topical and with vaginal. I've had a lot of luck with vaginal suppositories, which it's nice because it goes right to your uterus, but it's also systemic. So someone who's more susceptible to uterine and ovarian issues, it's nice to do it vaginally. But anyone with a progesterone intolerance orally does tend, I mean, there's some women that are really difficult, but for the most part, I've had success with topical and vaginal if oral is an issue.
Vaginal was great. I did that when I was going through fertility treatment for my son. And I used to do the suppositories because I had a fertility doctor who I went to see. And then when I got pregnant, they would give me the vaginal progesterone suppositories. So I had no issue with that. It was literally just the oral progesterone, the micronized progesterone. And I'm guessing, is it because progesterone can convert to estrogen? And is that what was creating the literally, I felt like I was pregnant. My boobs felt like I was pregnant. I had to come off it, and within a week, they were back to normal.
No, it's more the way it is metabolized, more the way the metabolites interact with your neurotransmitters in your brain. They go to a more excitatory neurotransmitter instead of the allopregnanolone calming. And for whatever reason, I mean, there's like no research on this stuff. For whatever reason, a woman who gets more of the excitatory response from oral can metabolize it better, and their body processes it in a more calming way, vaginally or topically.
But why boobs? Like, why would my I'm like, okay, I get that
Because
from
it feels
a standpoint.
estrogen, right? I I don't think that you were getting enough to combat the estrogen.
Combat the estrogen that I was taking. Yeah, no, that is 100% true. That there wasn't that balance. But anyways, I was just curious as to
Because
what
you were probably only getting a small portion. I
of
mean,
the
or
progesterone.
definitely when you swallow anything, you're getting a smaller portion
Yeah.
when you apply it topically or vaginally. And so 100 probably just wasn't cutting it. And maybe if you went up to 200 or 300, that may have helped. For some women, they could get, I don't know if you know Carol Peterson, but her whole thing is really like 1,000 milligrams. She's had luck with women who are resistant to progesterone and progesterone intolerant. She'll ramp it up. And
Well,
it's
no, I'm going to be clear. Sorry to interrupt you. I want to be clear. Is I was taking 0.25 milligrams of estrogen and progesterone cream. I never had an issue with breast pain. It's only once it was probably 6 or 7 months in that I switched to oral progesterone that the breast pain started. So it wasn't that it was I do agree that there wasn't enough of a balance, but that's not the reason that my boobs were hurting. So that's, I just want to be very clear that it wasn't like the estrogen, but okay, go ahead.
Were you still on the cream and taking the oral? Or did you
So I
stop?
stopped the cream, the progesterone cream, and then switched to the oral progesterone. But I was always taking the same amount of estrogen. I never switched the amount of estrogen. I did it for about a year, and I
I
never.
think that's why I think you weren't metabolizing enough. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I don't think you were metabolizing enough of the oral progesterone when you stopped the topical. I think it was you just weren't balancing it.
Maybe yeah, it's so fascinating to me. Like it's to me that whole thing. But now I take DHEA, and I love taking, and I take a little bit of pregnenolone with it. Like it's a from a company, and that I find I really like. Like my body really likes it.
I like vaginal DHEA a lot.
I've heard about it. I haven't tried it though. So are they suppositories? Like how do you take vaginal DHEA?
You can take a cream or a suppository. I do a cream. I do it every couple of nights, and it really helps with the integrity of your skin, your collagen, your elastin, the musculature.
I
So,
love it. I do Julva. Is that what you Julva? It's Dr. Anna Kabecka's cream. Is that
oh,
like
I love her, and I love her. Oh yeah, you had her on recently.
I love her too, and I take Java, and I absolutely love it. So I take oral DHA, and I use her Java, but I don't know if you're saying you just take a straight up DHA because it has DHA in it.
I actually take Quicksilver Scientifics.
That's what. Oh, okay. I'm taking their oral DHA. That's exactly what I'm taking.
Their
I
products are
interviewed Chris. Yeah, I interviewed Chris on my podcast like a long time ago about it, and which I'll put a link to below. And that's when I started taking the Quicksilver, their DHA, which has pregnenolone in it.
and he has some good, there's really great topical progesterones out there. He has a nice one. Karen Martell has a nice
Love
one.
Karen. Yep, I love Karen as
Um,
well.
and there's a company called Raina. It's Dr. Keneally's daughter.
Love Dr. Aaron
Yeah,
Keneally. Amazing.
they're a really nice
It's
family.
Dr. Lee Aaron
Yeah,
Keneally. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, she's amazing.
She's really great. And so I believe she's the medical director at Raina, but they have
Okay.
some nice direct to consumer
She's
products.
amazing. I interviewed her in 2021 for our summit. This was so long ago. And I just think she's so, I like, because she's so balanced.
Yeah, she is balanced.
And I went to her clinic several years ago and I met her daughter. So yeah, no, and I saw another one of her doctors. It's awesome.
I did I saw her last year. I did a QT scan there. There's only a few machines around. We actually have one in Scottsdale where I live, but they don't have a radiologist right now to properly read it. So I went to see her. She's close to Felice Gersh location wise, not personally, but their offices are pretty close. So sometimes I'll go out and see both of them. But she has a really good practice out there.
Yeah, I really like her. I definitely recommend if you're in California and in the Anaheim area, go check her out at her clinic. They're pretty awesome and very like I said, very balanced. And I follow her on Instagram, and I find I learned a lot. I learn a lot from her.
Well, she's very strong into progesterone. It's like everyone sings the praises of estrogen, and of course we need it. But I think progesterone is sort of the unsung hero. And
Yeah.
that's what we're suffering from in perimenopause, largely with the anxiety and depression and thyroid function. And so again, like back to the pill, if you're cutting off your own natural ovulation, you're cutting off whatever progesterone that you are processing. And if you try to supplement with natural progesterone while you're on the pill, your receptors are already blocked. I mean, it can help a bit, but your receptors are being blocked by the progestins, and synthetics tend to dock more strongly than bioidenticals. So the bioidenticals are sort of swimming around while your receptors are blocked.
And just a quick note too is that you're taking Quicksilver's DHA, which has pregnenolone, and pregnenolone can convert to progesterone, right? So that's why, like, when I've had my hormones tested recently, and my progesterone levels are really great because of the fact that I'm taking the DHA with the pregnenolone. So, anyways, just a kind of a quick little side note. But
Yeah, I do think that the DHA and pregnenolone also are like unsung heroes that a lot of
I agree.
people ignore. And I don't need a lot of, it doesn't need to be like 25 milligrams of DHEA. Five,
I
six.
take a little bit. Yeah, I just take a little bit. I don't even take the full dose. Exactly. Me too.
Yeah, a little bit goes a long way. And also, I'd like women to understand that, everything comes back, of course, to our gut health, and we want,
Of course.
the proper balance of microbes. We don't want leaky gut. Why? Because we're already at an increased risk of all autoimmune issues during perimenopause. So we want to keep our integrity of our mucosal lining the best we can. And the pill does cause leaky gut, and it does deplete our gut of, lacto and bifido. So of
Hmm.
course you can supplement with those things. You can take things to, I recommend women take things to balance their mucosal lining anyway during this time, but especially if they've chosen to be on the birth control, or if they're pill, or if they're trying to get off of it during that transition and months after.
So basically, what you're saying is if you're on the pill, you need to be intentional with some
Yes.
other things. Yeah, like your nutrients, like your nutrition, like everything, and be mindful. So what if a lot of our listeners right now are saying, okay, Elizabeth, I totally get what you're saying. I want to go to the doctor. How does this conversation happen? What should they say? Provide them with some vocabulary that they could use so that they can take to their healthcare practitioner.
If they're on the pill and in perimenopause and they go,
Yep. Like, so if they're, in our age group and they're listening to this podcast, then they either think they are or they are in perimenopause or menopause. 20% of us are unsure. So maybe some women are starting to learn about it as well. And they're on the pill and they want to have a conversation with their healthcare practitioner as to, helping them through this phase of life. How can they start that conversation?
well, I would say be mindful of the fact that you're probably going to be offered an IUD right after that. And so, which is again, it's either going to be copper and has some
That's
inflammatory risks,
progesterone.
or it's going to be the progestin. And so, or, the mini pill that's progestin only. So a lot of physicians are going to want to then think that, oh, well, you're concerned about estrogen because everyone worries about estrogen. So let's just switch you to progestin only. It's just a mini pill. It's safe and it's all these things, but it's progestin. We really want our progesterone. So keep that in mind when, if as a woman, if you're going to your physician at that time. And I would just say, I really want to know where my hormones stand. And I understand that as long as I have synthetic hormones in my system, I'm not, or even bioidentical, if you're taking any kind of hormones, you're not going to know what your own natural production is. And say, I would like to stop any sort of hormone that I'm on so I can give my body some time to sort of recalibrate and see where I'm at. I'd like to know if I'm menopausal, perimenopausal. I would like to wait a couple months and then take a look so I know where I'm at.
And the difference between progesterone and progestins, maybe you can just give that quick difference as well.
So progestins tend to be inflammatory. Progesterone is very anti-inflammatory. Progestins do not help with bone health. Progesterone does. Progestins don't help with anxiety and depression. In fact, they're linked to more anxiety and depression. Whereas progesterone, if you're not intolerant to it, is more calming. And even if you are intolerant, just play around with it. I know a lot of women that try taking HRT and give up, and they say, well, I didn't feel well, I'm bloated, it didn't help with my anxiety. But there are so many different ways and concentrations and applications of HRT. It's very complicated. So it is important to work with a practitioner who has seen a lot of women and is like, oh, okay, I know I've seen this, no big deal. Let's try this.
Yeah. Something that
It's not an easy road. You need to pay attention to your symptoms and how you feel and keep track. It's not. I think it's great that HRT is so much more embraced now in the past couple of years than it was. But a lot of women then go in with false expectations of thinking that all of a sudden they're going to sleep great, all their problems are going to go away, their hair is going to get thicker, their skin's going to look more youthful. It's not, for some women it is, but for most women I can say it's not that simple. You need to really play around with it and be open to change.
Well, I always say there's no panacea. There's a toolbox. You have a toolbox, and then there's tools in the toolbox of nutrition, lifestyle supplements, and or hormones. I always say if that's what you choose, right? So I think at the end of the day, it's important that if you're on hormones, which is amazing, if that's working for you, it's really important you still look at nutrition, lifestyle, and supplements. Like we can't get everything from anything, right? Like it really is a combination, a synergistic combination of a lot of different tools. And starting with nutrition and understanding how what our body needs, those more nutrients, especially like, and because we're coming from different things, like if you're on the pill, you need more certain nutrients. Like our body, our microbiome is changing, and our thyroid, like there's so many things going on. But I think if you have those foundations, those four foundations, again, the and or hormones, if that's what you choose, plus the three others, I think that alone will make a big difference and will really help you feel a lot better as you go into perimenopause and menopause and stay in menopause for the rest of your life.
And foundations right down to like, are you going to the bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have a sluggish thyroid, which a lot of women have at that point, and your digestion is slow, you're losing your hydrochloric acid and your digestive enzymes, and things are slowing down, and you're not going to the bathroom every single day, and you add estrogen onto that. Now it's circulating. Now you're having the estrogen dominant feeling. And now you think that HRT isn't for you. Well, that's not necessarily true, but now let's just focus on your microbiome. Let's focus on your digestion. Let's add, it's more complicated.
So what do you recommend, Elizabeth? Because a lot of women like will go to their doctor and their doctor might be giving them their menopause hormone therapy, but yet their doctor may not be in the know of all this. So is it a combination of healthcare practitioners, like someone like yourself, or what do you recommend to the women who are listening to be like, okay, great, I need to be able to find the right practitioners to help me?
Well, I recommend that a woman be open-minded to potentially changing practitioners or adding on to their current practitioner, because the reality is that most women are still with their gynecologist that delivered their babies. And those doctors are not trained in HRT unless they made an effort to go back to getting training and getting educated in the field. They just don't offer that in most medical schools or in OBGYN programs. So I think a lot of people are under the misguided belief that just because it's a woman's, fertility specialist even, or an
Yeah.
endocrinologist, that they have any real understanding of what menopause is. So I understand that you might love this doctor and they may have, seen you through a lot of hard times, but they may not be the right person to guide you through this time of life. It doesn't mean you have to get rid of them altogether. Maybe you're still going to them for your pelvic exams and your checkups, but you might want to add in someone who has more training or more of a background in holistic wellness. So someone who's looking at your liver function, your digestive function, someone who's going to spend a little bit more time with you talking about all of the things. And it doesn't have to be someone who prescribes hormones. It can be a health coach that just coaches you through this, and they do different, more functional labs for you, and they give you the results, and they give you sort of like the clip notes of, hey, this is what we found. Ask your doctor for this. Ask them for this prescription or whatever, kind of go over this. And if you're getting a lot of resistance from your doctor, then you might want to move on to a different physician.
And
But
what are the top tests that you recommend that women ask for?
thyroid for sure. Most women are just getting TSH, which is a pituitary, marker. It's not a thyroid marker. It gives us a clue for sure. But most women are not getting the whole picture of their T4 or T3, reverse T3. That's really important. It also gives us insight into their gut and liver function when we have, more thyroid markers, including antibodies. Of course, you can have Hashimoto's and not have antibodies, but it's the more the better. And again, these are blood tests. These aren't really functional labs. They're covered under insurance, and if not, they're inexpensive. I like to do a full CBC with differential, which is a great way to look for parasitic infections or viral or bacterial infections that may have run amok if you don't want to pay for like the more expensive GI or Genova testing, the full-on, stool testing. You can see a lot from blood.
Yeah.
And a full fractionated lipid panel. So most women are just getting HDL and LDL. It's not telling us, LP little a and ApoB and all of the oxidative markers. Our oxidative stress goes up a tremendous amount when we're losing estrogen, because estrogen's an antioxidant. So those are some clues if you are unsure about your hormonal markers. They're all over the place, but now all of a sudden your cholesterol is going way up and your oxidative cholesterol is going way up. That's a really good clue that you're losing estrogen. Thyroid markers are changing. That's a good clue you're losing progesterone. So we can sort of, we can do some pretty cheap, mostly covered under insurance blood tests and do some detective work and get a pretty good insight into what's going on. But you have to really be forthcoming with your practitioner and say, and don't just ask for a thyroid panel, because more times than not, you're just going to get a TSH. So it's nice to have a list if you're working with a coach or anyone. Come in with a list of blood tests that you want.
So how can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more or to work with you?
My website is strongchoices.com. I like to do a lot of educational content on Instagram at strongchoices1. And they can DM me or email me from my website. And I have some downloadable things about like what to take to your doctor, what test to ask for. I have a pamphlet on what to ask your doctor for to give you a clue into where they're coming from, right? So if your doctor automatically is like, no, I don't look for that, I don't bother with TSH is enough, that sort of thing, then that clues you in. It might be time to add on to your team.
To add a member to your team, exactly. I recently had that experience. It's funny, I've been hearing, I had to switch doctors because my doctor retired and is no longer practicing. And I went to this new doctor. It's happened just last week. And I was like explaining, because I've been on thyroid medication, as I said, for many, many years. And I know that I need to tweak it. And I was saying that I was having these certain symptoms. And he was like, no, it can't be because of your thyroid. Literally, it was like dismissing me. And I'm like, I know it's my thyroid. I've been on thyroid hormones for like a really long time. I know my body. And literally he was arguing with me saying, no, it can't be. It can't be that.
And then you're like, okay, wrong fit.
I'm like, really? Like, that's not the case. And it's like, you hear about it over and over, but it hadn't happened to me. And I was like, I just walked out of there and I called my friend who's a thyroid coach. I've had her on the podcast many times, Danielle. And I'm like, it just happened to me. And I'm just like, I was kind of in shock because I literally, and I said to him, I'm like, I know my body and I'm telling you, it's because I need to tweak it and like tweak it. Anyways, it's frustrating. It was very frustrating that it had happened. So I think, finding the right fit and that right medical professional is really important for us.
And just having some patience and realizing that, yeah, there's some bad ones, but there's a lot of great ones.
Yeah.
So, it's like dating or anything else. It's a numbers thing.
Tons of great medical practitioners, medical doctors, and like Dr. Lakeisha, like I've had several on my podcast. Like there are, and doctors that understand perimenopause and menopause. That's the important thing, right? And I think that at the end of the day is super important. Like Dr. Tara Scott, like these are women that literally day in, day out, they focus and they practice and work with women in perimenopause and menopause. So I think all of that is super important.
Yeah, and it's not fair to go to Taco Bell and order Burger King, right? Like,
exactly. Good analogy. Yeah, exactly. So I love it. Well, thank you so much for doing this, Elizabeth. It was very informative and I learned a lot, which is why I do what I do. So
thank you, Andrea. I loved it. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Elizabeth. If you did, please share it, because the more you share shows you care. And please take a moment to rate and review our podcast, because when you do that, the algorithm sends it out to more people so we can help more women in perimenopause and menopause. I love that Elizabeth talked about getting regular testing done, because once you know what's going on with your body, you can actually help yourself. It's empowering so that you can find solutions so that you could feel better. And I also want to remind you that we've got a new survey on our website, which is our pelvic health survey. So if you haven't filled that out, or if you haven't filled out any of the other surveys on our website and you're newer to the podcast, please take a moment to do so, because by the end of this year, we will have 7 published studies on perimenopause and menopause. So we'd be very grateful if you can take a moment to do that. The link is below in the show notes. Thank you for spending the last little bit with me. I know there's a lot you could be doing, but instead, you chose to spend your time with me, and for that, I'm grateful. I'll see you at the next interview.